Welcome back to the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm joined by Kevin from our SEO team. How are you doing today, Kevin?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yep, of course. Happy to have you here. This is your first time on the podcast.
Yes.
You're the mastermind behind so many of the strategies that we are using from an SEO standpoint, so I'm definitely excited to dig into all of this. And today we're going to be talking about link building, which for those that aren't familiar, what would you say, how would you describe link building?
A mess. Link building is very, very kind of a complicated and nuanced strategy that relates to SEO, but it's definitely, over the last forever since Google's been around, it's been top 2, top 3 ranking metrics kind of always. So it's important.
Yeah. So in case anybody's not following us, backing up a little bit too, because I jumped straight into link building. Of course, SEO, optimizing for search engines. Link building, you'll hear the word tossed around a lot because it's a pretty important ranking signal for Google. And people want these things called backlinks. Mm-hmm. And how important is it these days, actually? Because obviously there's a ton of different ranking signals for Google, but link building itself.
Yeah, I mean, there's several hundred ranking signals, and Google's constantly changing their algorithms to in efforts to always make their algorithm or their search results pages for their keywords when people search for a keyword to make them all the more relevant. And so Google's constantly fine-tuning things. So making sure that your link building strategy that's part of your SEO strategy is in check is really important, because there's lots of different directions you can take it, and some will result in success, some won't, and some could even result in success temporarily, and then keywords go down and traffic goes away. So it's complicated.
Yeah, we actually had this experience with a client. And it's funny because probably everybody listening to this would know this client. And they had like some sketchy director of marketing in their company that had a friend that has a WordPress plugin that puts like a footer on on a bunch of different websites, and it links them all to each other.
Yeah.
And anyways.
Link schemes. Yeah, we'll be going into that.
Yeah.
They're kind of fun.
It was fun. It was they were kind of doing this simultaneously with what we were doing, and it was amazing to see how quickly the rankings went up and then down right after that with the success and then subsequent failure of the Black Hat strategy. But before we get too deep into that, what's a backlink?
I mean, a backlink is any link that is from a third-party website to yours. So it just links back to you, so hence the term backlink. I mean, links are kind of the building blocks of the internet. It's how Google discovers new pages, and it's how Google will ultimately deem how authoritative a page is. And so a backlink is just a link that is pointing back to your website.
Okay, understood. And these links, I guess some context for everybody listening. I don't know that I've ever really seen like a whole SEO strategy that doesn't include backlinking. This is like, it's one of the main pillars. I'm sure, I mean, you've done a lot of the audits from people that are working with other SEO companies before we start working with them. There's always some type of backlinking strategy. It varies in quality. Well,
I mean, absolutely, because Google's algorithms are still so, They need to know the outside perception of a website in order to understand its authority. They can't just rely on your own content, because you can say whatever you want about yourself, but if there's 20 websites that are all about being a home buyer, the differentiator in those 20 websites is going to be how popular they are on the internet, and so Google uses backlinks to figure that out.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you right, a backlink is basically a heuristic for the authority of a website or
I mean,
its popularity or something like that. Google assumes if there's more websites linking to this website, then it must be more important somehow, probably better to show.
Yeah, on the surface, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know I just skipped over like 100 different things that are often wrong about backlinking strategies. Let's talk, if you don't mind, about some of the things that we see people doing wrong. I know you've done a lot of analysis of different sites in this industry. We've had clients that have had previous SEO campaigns before they started working with us. What are you seeing that, and I know there's going to be a lot here, so we can pick through it one piece at a time, but how are people getting backlinking wrong?
Well, I mean, how they're getting there, it might be good for me to start a little bit before that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So just as like a broad disclaimer to anything that we're going to be talking about, almost everything has an exception. There's an exception to every rule with SEO, and that's especially true with link building. And all the things that we're actually talking about are part of the campaigns that we have with Bateman Collective. So, there's lots of really good things you can do that are always that if you're following every single rule that Google gives or that the industry implies is always the best way to do it. There's no bang for your buck over here, basically, and I'll get into why. And then on the other side of that, if you are going about link building from a standpoint of only trying to get rankings, and that's the only thing that matters to you, and I get it, that kind of still is true, that is the other thing, right? But if you're doing it for only those reasons, you're going to be violating a whole bunch of things that Google could potentially penalize you for. And so there's a million different things, and there's not a whole lot of room for binary thinking when it comes to link building and SEO. So going into that, then I'm happy to talk about those things.
Yeah. Would you say that same idea applies to most things in SEO? There's like, if you did everything exactly by the book, this is what it would look like. It would also be extremely expensive. It would move extremely slowly. Yeah. And then on the other side, you have just complete, like you said, only caring about rankings, but it's almost like your objective's not to do what Google wants you to do, but to trick Google instead on the far other side.
Right. Yeah,
and then,
you don't want to do that.
Yeah. And then everything's like somewhere in, most strategies that people use are somewhere in the middle between those, right? You're trying to get productivity, get a lot of things done, be cost efficient, but at the same time, you're not trying to break rules.
Right. Yeah. Because
would you say it's true?
Absolutely. Because you can, if a link building strategy could be not outwardly trying to build links. It could be just a content strategy on your website. And so, in a perfect world, that's probably what Google would want, is that, you're only naturally, attracting links to your website by building really, really good content. And that's just not feasible for most industries. And
especially this industry.
This industry is a tough one.
I don't know of anybody in this industry that just wrote a blog post that was so good that they got hundreds of other websites linking to their blog post because it was so insightful, and they just thought it was great for their readers.
Yeah, and so that's why, even if it was a really good article that you wrote, or a infographic, or whatever it is, there's lots of different strategies to build really good content on your website. Most of those strategies still have a component of reaching out to other places that might be interested in it, and asking them to link to it if they do like it. So it's still like one step towards what Google isn't like totally wanting. They're not going to have a problem with that. They have a whole bunch of other stuff to worry about, which we'll go over. But if we're trying to be literal here, Google probably doesn't want anybody building links, but they also know the reality that everybody is. Yeah,
here we are with the whole industry built around link building, because that's just how it goes. So is it an appropriate time now to dig into like what are people doing wrong with link building if they're falling too far on the ineffective side, maybe, or if they're falling too far on the black hat side of things? What is it that they're doing wrong?
Definitely. What they're ultimately doing wrong, I will die on this hill. What they are ultimately doing wrong.
Glad you have a stance on something. I'm excited to hear this.
No, Link building in particular is a very opinionated topic, even more than SEO already is. Everybody has their own experience. Everybody tried something once and it worked, so now everybody should do it because it's a great new strategy. And that still there might be some truth element of some of those things, but all I'm getting at is that it's really opinionated field. And so anyways, the things that people are doing wrong, the hill I'll die on with this is ultimately comes down to how you are obtaining the link is ultimately, it's all about whether or not that webmaster maintains their editorial control. So Google, it's not so much the strategy, like whether it's a guest post or a directory submission or a bookmark link or whatever. It's all about whether or not where that link is being placed, whether or not that the editor or the webmaster of that website has control over whether or not that link was placed and whether or not they approved it. And if they did, the circumstances around that are also important. Was it a paid link? Because if it is a paid link, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, because there's lots of, there's affiliate links. There's lots of reasons why you might pay to advertise on another website. So if that is the case, that's fine. Google just says to add a no-follow tag, which is just a little snippet of code within that hyperlink that when Google crawls it, it tells Google to not count this as something that passes authority to wherever it's pointing, right? And so paid links are a problem. But also there's they're not nearly as common, but they used to be more common of private blog networks, or PBN for short.
I see a lot of those in this industry, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, there's you'd be surprised. We've seen a few audits recently. There's people going full force with that strategy with 7,000 backlinks to their site from these. But anyways, it shouldn't be popular anymore, but it is somehow.
It is. I mean, I love creativity, and figuring out just like a fun new way of testing something. But that's fine when it's your own website, not when you're working with clients, not when you're working with that type of stuff. I've tested lots of things that Google probably wouldn't like on my own personal domains to just test and see. I mean, that's how this industry grew. It's just from people trying new things. And so I do that just out of curiosity. But yeah, certain strategies like that you wouldn't really want to have running for your clients.
Okay, let me see if I understand this and summarize this. Okay, so there's two types of links: no follow, do follow. Mm-hmm. And basically any paid link that you get is generally going to be one where it should say no follow, which means Google's basically getting information that this is not a link that of course the link exists, the link works, but it's not one that they're going to count in their algorithm for authority or something like that.
Exactly.
And those are going to be paid. And then the other thing that you mentioned is it's about webmaster control. And I think what you're getting at there, or how I'm understanding that, is basically the harder the link is to get, the better it is usually.
I mean, usually.
Yes,
usually.
Of course, there's no I get what you're saying. It's not a hard and fast rule, but the point there being, if this is just a place, like if this is Facebook and I can just log in, I can just post something and I can link from that post mm-hmm. to a certain website, that probably has almost no value because Facebook doesn't really control if that happens or not.
That, and I mean, Facebook is behind a password anyway, so Google's not really indexing it. But regardless of whether it is, let's call it Quora, mm-hmm. right? Like Q&A websites like that. I haven't done Quora for a while, but I'm almost positive that anything that you post there, all those links are going to be no followed, for that exact reason.
Even Forbes now is all no follow.
Yeah.
Because you can have, what do they have? They have like content partners that are putting stuff on their website. Basically, what's it called? Like anybody can get an article in Forbes.
Yeah. I mean, you're right that they can. The actual the real editors, those ones might still be followed links, do follow links. But I mean, everybody, there's lots of, I get these emails all the time of people saying that they can sell you these high DA links on these websites. And those you don't really want to work with that, even if they're offering to sell it on, like a Forbes type of website, a website you might actually know. Some of them work, some of them don't. They might just steal your money. I don't know, but generally speaking, you don't want to pay a webmaster for links, because that gets rid of that editorial control. They're now incentivized. So how much editorial control? I mean, yes, they have control over it, but it's also breaking the rule of it being an incentivized link. And that can be either direct payment, or that can be trade of services. I'm trying to think of Google's link schemes page. Trade of services, or offering a product that they get to keep to review, or something like that. So, because normally you wouldn't have had that link otherwise.
Yeah. How would they know?
How would Google know?
Yeah.
You're completely right. Google, there's no way to know if someone's paying for links.
But would it be fair to say that still, on average, if you're paying for links, you're going to be getting lower quality than if you're generating them through some other means, just because generally anything where they are sacrificing editorial control means they're doing that on the website overall, and that could degrade the quality?
Yeah, on the whole, that's probably the case.
Unless you find like some website that has never ever done that, and they just chose for you alone to do that, which you probably won't.
Yeah. But where some people might be thinking, especially any clients listening to this, well, I'm paying you to do SEO, so does that mean I'm paying for links? No, that's not what that means. You're paying us for services. You're paying us, but we're not paying the webmaster, and that's the gatekeeper. That's who matters, whether or not they receive payment or not.
Yeah, paying us is like having an employee that covers marketing and naturally generates
Exactly.
backlinks or something like that. Like technically everybody's getting paid in some company to generate backlinks, even if it's just that they're posting content that's so good that everybody links to it,
Yeah.
because somebody had to write the content
Right.
to get the links originally, or whatever the case is.
And so with link building, there's very few hard and fast rules. So I'm going to go through those hard and fast rules, especially ones that are mentioned like specifically on Google's link schemes page, which I don't know if there's like show notes or something, but we can include a link to that. But so Google says automated software, low quality directory listings or social bookmarking websites, private blog networks, in online forums, where you can have like a signature and you can include a link in the signature. So every single time you post on the forum, it includes that link in your signature. So they're saying that's not a good idea. Unless follow it. And there's lots of people that do business off of forums, and they might have a link to their website because they sell, parts for your car or something. I don't know. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Just put a no follow tag on that, and you're not going to run into any issues with Google. But then and then also like link swapping, so reciprocal linking. So I'll link to you if you link to me. Or if there's any other grand scheme, like you were talking about with that WordPress plugin, and there's a bunch of other home buyers that have this WordPress plugin, and all of a sudden you have this network of people linking to each other. And Google's not going to like that either.
People ask us
creative,
sometimes why we don't just link all of our websites to all of our other websites.
And, well, I won't get into the creative part of it. It's not a good idea, but
Isn't there a specific name for that? Like it's a specific type of link scheme. I can't remember what it's called. Depending on how you do it, it could be like a link wheel or...
Oh, yeah. A link wheel.
Would it be a link wheel?
I guess you could call it that, yeah. I haven't heard that in a long time, but...
this is like some like 07 SEO stuff?
Yeah.
Or what?
Yeah. But then it's not... but it's also not just about, how you're getting the link or like from what type of website. It's how you structure the content that you're giving. So anchor text is just the text that is associated with that link. It's just the link text. And so that anchor text, if, in the past, Google has looked at that anchor text to understand the relevancy of your website. It's not just the authority now, it's now the relevancy. We know, this website's authoritative, but now we know they're authoritative on this topic. So if you have a keyword in there, then before Google really valued that. So all of a sudden everybody started doing keyword-based anchor text.
Can I make a comment real quick? Just what anchor text is, in case someone's not familiar. This would be like on the the website that links, it's basically like the text that someone clicks to click the link, right? So it could be like click here, or it could be go to this URL and it's the URL. Or what you're talking about is it could be, in this article it says if you want to sell your house fast, and then sell your house fast is hyperlinked, and it might link to a home buyer's website or something like that.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. Thanks for the clarification. So that exact match anchor text, which is what Google considers it to be, is just a highly searched keyword. And there's, tons of them. But that's a highly searched keyword, so the more of those you have, back a long time ago, the better you would rank, until Google started updating their algorithms and realized that, people are manipulating the system. They're not earning these links. These links are no longer a reflection of how authoritative they actually are in the real world, and that's because of the amount of links that they're getting, but also just the anchor text that they're using. So Google does not want exact match, keyword anchor text. That's not to say that the word house can't be in anchor text or any of the individual words, but when they see 50 links coming to your website and they all say sell your house fast, that's a trend. That's a pattern. It's really easy for Google to see that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're saying it's not necessarily a problem, like with many things in SEO in moderation. It's just that people used to fire up their private blog network and make 1,000 links that all say "sell my house fast" in them to your site, and then you just pop up to the top of Google. And
Exactly.
that just doesn't happen anymore.
Still kind of does.
See, that's the really frustrating
That's
thing.
really frustrating.
Yeah, and this is some context for everybody here is like all these things that we talk about. We talked about you have one side over here where it's way safe. You're going to have a team of 20 people that are going to do everything exactly right, and you're not going to get anywhere. And I almost picture the government. Like if your company operated like the government, that would be that side. And then, not to make this political, and then on the other side, you have like a scrappy startup level hack. I'm going to, I'm just going to black hat everything. Where was I going with that? What were we talking about?
Well, just that there are some shady or black hat strategies that some people still use, and they still actually get somewhere with them.
Yes,
and that's
yes.
frustrating.
It's not just results that matter. That's basically what I was getting to, because I talk to people all the time where they're like, well, this other person in my market, they just shot up to the top of Google. I want to do what they're doing.
They're the exception, not the rule. And
yeah, and the thing about it is, we had that one client where they were doing all that black hat stuff without us authorizing it, so to speak, and it shot them up in rankings, and then they crashed really hard because of it. And I guess my point there being, a lot of people would assume that the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Like if the SEO company does good work, for example, then their clients get rankings, and their clients get rankings quickly. And if we look at the best ranking website in the market, doing what they did is probably the way to get the best ranking. It's not. It doesn't quite work like that. That's a really frustrating thing. There's a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here is we're saying not to do. It actually works sometimes, but it just doesn't work in the long term. And that's the problem. And the real value of SEO is in the long term. Right. We're talking about this being like that passive form of lead generation that gets you leads consistently over time, a growing lead flow, and it gets more and more cost effective over time, and it's a true asset, and you own this like theoretical real estate of the internet that's on Google. This is like having a fraudulent deed in that scenario, right? You don't actually own the house. You might be getting the cash flow right now, but you don't actually own the house.
Yeah, or just remodeling the house with just the absolute bare essentials to make it
not
pass
doing it right.
inspection, or all that type of. It's not going to last. It's going to be a junky remodel, but not for the first week.
Yeah, it'll look really great in the pictures, right?
Yeah.
And then,
That's right.
and then as you get deeper, I don't know how many companies. I personally know several companies that with algorithm updates went out of business because of Google.
And and even worse, Google used to issue out penalties for this type of stuff a lot more than they do now. But it seemed like it was like like 2012, 2013. It was referred to.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, it was
like Panda and what was the other
Penguin.
one?
That was the big one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Penguin. Yeah.
Penguin
was the big
update.
one.
And the agencies alike. I mean, I worked for an agency at the time, and it destroyed their lead flow. But it's just kind of how it goes sometimes, I guess. They knew better. Everybody knew better back then, but they were still doing it.
Yeah.
So
Understood. So, okay, so we talked about anchor text. You also mentioned one thing. You said that you can get these emails from these companies saying they'll give you high DA backlinks. I want to define that and talk about that because DA stands for domain authority. I think domain authority is really one important thing. And in the world of buying links, it's also something really used to determine pricing a lot of the times. And it's used to determine quality kind of as a heuristic, which I'm sure you're going to say isn't really the way to think about it. I mean, it's a factor, right? But to define what domain authority is, as I understand it, I'd love for you to fill in the gaps.
Your domain's authority, and domain authority DA. That's a metric that the company Moz uses. All these other companies like Moz, whether it's SEMrush or Ahrefs, they all have their own scale from 0 to 100, and that's all primarily based on the authority of backlinks that they see are going to your website.
So these are SEO tools.
These are SEO tools.
Right. So domain authority, I think the point you're making is this isn't like an actual metric that Google gives us or something. This is a metric that tools have made up to measure the strength of a backlink profile, basically.
Exactly, and it's trying to replicate what Google has internally. That one's called PageRank, but Google doesn't report on what PageRank, what score you are. They used to, but it's been a really long time. And so that PageRank, that number, is just a good indicator of a website's authority. But it doesn't always mean that the link that you're going to get from that website is going to be worthwhile. There's still other things that need to be taken into consideration.
So to explain this in like a super simple way, right? As a website does more quality link building, their domain authority would go up, right? That's the theoretical thing that happens, right? I think of this. I think Noah's actually described this sometimes. Backlinks when it comes to like quality versus quantity. He said it's like you're in high school, and each link you have, that's like a friend. But the higher domain authority, that's how popular those people are.
Yeah.
Right. And this determines eventually your status or your popularity in this high school, right? So you could have one link from the most popular. You could have one friend that's the most popular person in the entire school. That's going to make a pretty big impact.
Yeah.
Or you can have 100 friends that are the least popular people in the school, and that would not make a big impact, right? So that's the quality versus quantity.
Now let's add relevancy to that, because you could get a popular kid to like you, but in your circle of friends and influence and whatever it is that you are relevant towards, they may not care about that at all, because that's not, they don't care about a football player or something in their circle of people, right? So if you get a link from a highly relevant website, but it's not at all relevant to your industry,
so highly authoritative but not relevant,
then it can still, you might still see some effects of it, but it's not going to be as if you were to get a lower authoritative link on a relevant website that's going to yours. That can be way more effective. And so it's not all about an authority score, but authority and relevancy are two things that get weighed here. I'd probably even put relevancy above authority.
Okay. So we don't want links from completely random websites out there, because while those could have authority in Google's eyes, they don't tell Google that we're relevant to people wanting to sell their house.
Yeah.
But
if there could be a relevancy score, and maybe Google does have it, it would be very low. So it'd almost be a wash.
Yep, understood. Okay, so those are two things. If we're talking about domains, what's important is the domain relevant to what we're going for, and are they authoritative?
And even more than is the domain is where you are, is the context around the link that you're getting from them contextually relevant. there's lots of industries that could link to Bateman Collective, or Bateman Collective could have a lot of links from other industries that are completely irrelevant, but contextually they are relevant. Bateman Collective is a digital marketing company. It's a digital marketing company, but if you got a link from, an HR company, is that relevant? It's like on the surface, no, because it's an HR company. They talk about PEOs and benefits and that type of thing. But if you were a case study because you use that HR company and all of a sudden you are relevant in that context because you're a case study for them and they're talking about all the great things they did for you, well, it's only deserving to attribute who the company is, right? And so that would be an example of a link that you could acquire that would be completely natural and relevant to get. Could it be more relevant? Sure, but that doesn't make it irrelevant.
Yeah, everything's on a scale. Right?
But there's no bridge that you could cross to make Bateman Collective relevant to, like, I don't know, a website that sells bulk candy or something. I don't know.
It's not going to be relevant. Okay, so authority and relevance are, I guess you could say, like two big things that impact like the quality of the backlink.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say about the interaction between quality and quantity? Because I've seen people go multiple directions here. I've of course seen the people with their 7,000 PBN links that are just either neutral or negative in their impact, right? Tons and tons of links, but they're not quality. And then I've seen on the other hand, we have a lot of clients that have like this idea when they're coming and working with us with SEO. It's like, oh, you're going to get me like this big, awesome backlink, and that's going to make all the difference. Like I just want because in a lot of things in business, it is really quality over quantity. And I think what some people learn through that is like, I don't want the bad quality. I want the really, really good one. And that's going to make all the difference. What would you say about that interaction between those things?
Well, if someone came to you and said, we want a lot of links because we know that we want to have a lot of links. Okay, well, what's that number? I mean, it almost doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. So the quantity, the measuring stick I've always used for that is the quantity of the amount of links that you're shooting to acquire needs to be relevant towards the market that you're trying to go after. And whoever the leaders are in that space, you need to look at their backlinks and understand how many they have. And I'm going to add something to this. There's backlinks, but there's also a thing called referring domains. So a referring domain is just how many domains are linking to you from X amount of links. One referring domain could have an infinite amount of links. And so just the topic of backlinks themselves, the quantity of them to me doesn't matter as much as how many referring domains are linking to you.
Yeah, because 1,000 backlinks from one website.
Yeah, Google's going to know that that's...
Maybe it's better than one. Maybe it's worse. I don't know at what point. There's probably a bell curve. Like two's better than one.
There's a diminishing return.
Yeah.
It's not bad to have 2, 3, 4, 5 links from a website, but you're going to have some diminishing returns. So having said that, I would be looking at the biggest keywords that I want to rank for and understanding who are the leaders in that area, and then understanding how many referring domains all of them have, and use that as kind of the on the low end I need this many, on the high end I need this many. Take out examples of like national companies, because they've got national budgets. They're focusing on a lot more than that area. But when you look at their referring domains, it's only going to show you everything. So only look at those that are actually comparable to you, and use that as the guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also probably keep in mind that a lot of those links they come naturally, right?
Sure,
like
yeah.
You get some backlinks, and then you'll get tons of backlinks that are lower quality that just come in from existing on the internet, especially as you become more popular.
Scraping websites, that type of stuff. Sometimes it always doesn't make sense when you're looking at all your backlinks. Like, where did these come from? And these don't seem relevant, and they might not be, but it also doesn't mean that it's causing you a problem or anything like that.
Yeah. There's also this concept of kind of a natural link profile. The idea that it's really normal for a website to have links all across the spectrum. Like if you had 0 backlinks and then you just come in with like 20 domain authority 90,
Yeah.
backlinks, that's weird, right? Like that's unnatural. Google's not used to that, right? Because there's a lot more low authority websites than there are high authority websites.
Yeah,
And
dramatically. Yeah.
yeah, and there should be some type of like relationship that somewhat matches the websites that exist there.
Yeah, and that, I mean, you can really dive into that where, then you try to understand how many links in each domain authority tier of like 1 through 10 or 10 through 20 or you can drive yourself a little bit crazy, going to those lengths. People like me do, but
Yeah.
anybody listening probably isn't going to need to.
Yeah, fair enough. But that's something I often talk about with clients that have that perspective of I just want the best links, right? I don't want other
Yeah.
things. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have like a ton of, between like domain authority 0 and 10, those are just going to come in just by nature, right? It's just, like you said, scraping websites, all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
a lot of those will just flow in, right? So you're going to end up with a decent number of those as a byproduct, probably, of other things that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 10 through 20, you probably have to work on.
Mm-hmm.
The 20 through 30, you have to work on. But you don't just want to go all 40 through 50 because then it looks unnatural, right? So there's kind of that game of like, we should generate
Exactly.
a lot of backlinks that fall on the bottom of that spectrum, and then slowly less and less as we climb up the domain authority.
Yeah, and the other blanket statement on everything that we're talking about is that even if you're taking a great strategy, you can have too much of a good thing, and if it looks unnatural, then you're going to run into issues.
Anything that doesn't look normal
Mhm.
is suspicious to Google. So let's talk about like some of the implications of all this stuff. I would love to make it, because I mean, we talked about like what people are doing wrong, what's some good stuff, what's some bad stuff, all that kind of stuff. But let's talk about what we do, like our specific link building strategy. What are the different components of that? Why do we do that the way that we do that? Let's start maybe with the because we've been talking about it, domain authority and relevance of different websites. How do we decide what websites to get backlinks from, and what domain authority they should have, and how do we get in touch with those websites?
Yeah. So as a general rule, what we have is there's certain strategies that we just don't touch because it's just the reward and payoff just doesn't really align. So for any of our clients, we are ultimately going for the best bang for the buck, but that's because that phrase is just really good to just find harmony with what we need to do and need to accomplish and what budget ultimately we have to work with. And so when we are working with any of our clients, there's certain standards that we maintain. We're not using exact match anchor text. We're not using private blog networks. We're not using any of the things that was on Google's list of no-nos. The thing that would be most comparable to what it is that we do would be what Google refers to as, and the industry kind of refers to as, guest blog posting. And they've come out, Google has come out and actually said that we don't want people guest posting. And so it's like, okay, well, why are we doing it, and why is the industry doing it? And that's because the blanket statement of we don't like people guest posting is, number one, it's kind of ridiculous and unenforceable, and Google got a lot of blowback when they came out with that.
Yeah, there's no visible difference between a guest post and any other post.
And a normal blog post.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no way for them to identify it. What Google is trying to address with this is they're trying to go after those who are just using PBNs that are just masquerading around as being a place that accepts guest posts. Usually they accept payment and all of the other problems that kind of we've talked about. And so it's not inherently like what a guest post is that's a problem. People do collaborations all the time. People accept outside content all the time. I mean, look at any website like Quora that we were talking about. That's user-generated content that they're benefiting from and selling ad space to, right? And so it's like, it's the approach. The approach is just everything here. And so you could compare us to that, where we are creating a piece of content, we're writing a blog post, and that blog post, we already know who that publisher, that place we're going to get the link. We already know who that publisher is, or at least that's what we're going to like plan around. And so we know our publisher and we know our client. And we need to create a piece of content that bridges the gap between those two audiences. So maybe this audience is about, maybe it's like a garage door company, right? And so naturally you can see how a garage door company could relate to a home buyer, and that's creating a piece of content that just talks about home values, or how a garage door can increase home values, or what to do during a renovation, those types of topics. And naturally it would be very reasonable to link to one of our clients, a home builder client or a home buyer client. It's just how we do that. The context is that's what matters. And so ultimately we're trying to find a justified reason to link to our client. Just because we figure out in the article how to get the words selling to a home buyer, just because we were able to get the words in there and it makes sense in that blog post, doesn't mean that it's justified to link to our client. We need to find a reason, and so lots of times we'll throw in quotes, for example. It's normal to give a quote that adds to the value of the article to the reader, and someone who is providing that deserves credit for that quote, and that credit comes in the form of that link. So and so from Joe's home buyer, and so all of these things kind of matter, because even if you get the relevancy right, the great content from a publisher that's super relevant, if you ultimately, if there's no reason to link to that to the homebuyer website, if there's no reason, then it's going to look manipulative. It's going to look promotional. It'll look like it's just inserted in there, and it's just contextually irrelevant. It's really weird to envision, because none of us have ever really come across that. When you go read a news article, all of the links that you read or click on, they are relevant or elaborating on a topic that they don't necessarily care to write about, because they're using that link as a way to give people context around what they're going to be writing about. And so it's really hard to envision, if you're not doing this every day, an article where a link is just kind of hand-fisted in there, because you just don't come across it. And so just the term justified link building is something that we just that our team really focuses on, because if the day ever came when Google gives a manual review of our backlinks, we don't want to be in the position of trying to justify these backlinks to Google, and the reason. It's the reason's there. It's giving credit to the quote. It's giving context around what that paragraph's about, and so that's important.
Yeah, well, that's where links are actually built for real reasons.
Exactly.
Which is what Google cares about.
Not just for keyword rankings. It's built for the user as well.
Cool. So the process is, number one, identify a publisher. And that publisher is someone who's closely related, contextually relevant to our industry. And then we want to get in contact with that publisher. And we could dig into that forever, but there's a lot of, it's not easy, right? Suffice it to say. And then once we're in touch with them, we write that bridge, basically. This is the piece of content that connects these two.
Lots of times we'll approach them either with a topic or the article already.
So you write it for them, and then you kind of message them and say, well, what do you think about this?
Yeah, and just in the interest of everybody's time, right? That's always good to lead with. Just because they've got a million other things going on in their life and with their business, we are a very low priority in their inbox. And so we need to make the offer of this content exciting enough for them to want to publish it. And so it's a very time-intensive process, and that's why links can take kind of a long time to build. And so when you're dealing with third parties, there's just there's situations like that where we're just beholden to their schedule.
Yeah, exactly. Any situation where the webmaster has control, like you mentioned
Exactly.
in the beginning, that naturally means that it's really complicated or difficult to get what you need. Okay, so we reach out to them, hopefully create that offer that they're really interested in, write that bridge between them and us. Where would we link that to? Do you link it to the home page? Do you link it to specific pages?
You link, well, it's going to be within that content that you write. And right now I don't have an example, but it needs to be justified. So it needs to go to a page that is going to elaborate or give context around wherever you're linking it to. And so if that is like a quote, then yeah, like linking to the home page, just because it's kind of the default page, that makes sense. But if it is within the context of, foreclosure, then maybe we link it to the foreclosure page, or probably most appropriate to link it to the foreclosure page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things I see a ton of in this industry is just all their backlinks go to the homepage or something like that. It's pretty common.
And the homepage is going to collect the most just naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we want it to be more spread out, especially if we're having a campaign where we're building 100 links over the course of a year. Yeah, you don't want those all to the homepage.
Got it. So then that content's posted, like you said, no exact match anchor text. Although I think there is a science to what the anchor text is. Having that be like a normal, something natural, normal distribution of different things, including some of the words that we want, but making it not.
So yeah, sometimes we include home, and sometimes we include cache, and sometimes we don't include any of them. Sometimes it's just click here. Sometimes it's just the URL. That's just
like how the internet usually works, right?
Exactly.
There's a huge variety, and it's not just going to be the keyword.
Yeah.
And then it links to a relevant thing on our website, and then we could talk about internal links too. That's its own beast. Is there anything else that you would say that's like really important about the way that we do backlinking?
Nothing's coming to mind. So,
all right.
I mean, I want to revisit the whole topic of guest posting, because there are people where that's what might perk up their ears, but there's nothing about the post it doesn't say guest post. It doesn't imply anything to anybody. It just looks like the normal webmaster wrote it and published it. And they always maintain their editorial control. So, and we don't pay them. So I think that's all like the main things.
Yeah, if you look at all the different ways to link build, I think it's still genuinely accepted that short of just writing amazing content that everybody wants to link to because your content's awesome, which I don't know it works in some industries, right?
For sure. Some industries
like thought
great.
Leadership, like all that kind of stuff. But short of that, as far as I'm aware, guest posting is really like generally accepted as the best form of link building.
Yeah, for sure. It's just depends how you do it. Are you guest posting on a PBN? It's like, no, that's not guest posting, but some people act like it is. Yeah,
of course. Okay, yeah. So yeah, for anybody listening, don't go out and buy 1,000 guest post backlinks because you heard this. Like it really depends how it is generated. A lot of details about that are gonna, like, you're not gonna see when you're looking in Moz.
Yeah.
And you're seeing like, they have this many links from this many domains, and we just have to buy that, and then we'll get what we want.
And one, and this probably could have been mentioned in the beginning, but another thing that's really, really important to understand with link building is that it's not PR. Link building is not PR. So we're building links, and we're doing it the right way with good content and all that stuff. But our goal still is to increase your rankings, and that's where you get traffic. Our goal isn't to build links to these websites and hope that somebody that reads it just so happens to be in your market, just happens to be reading that blog post, and just so happens to need to sell their house fast. Like, we don't care about referral traffic from these links that we're building. We care about these links influencing Google and increasing our keyword rankings when someone searches in Google. That's what we care about. PR is great. PR is just a different strategy. Getting a link on an article, like on your local news website, for example, and you're like a featured story. That's great. It's a different purpose, but it kind of looks similar.
Yeah, understood. Well, and it naturally does produce some level of link building too. PR is a strategy to get links in its own way. But yeah, not super big in this industry, just because like nobody has anything super noteworthy to say. Like, this is groundbreaking information that this company will buy your house. It's just your same everyday information. It's not that cool, right?
Exactly.
So nobody wants to link to it without you asking them to. Nobody wants to go write articles and stuff because it's just not interesting.
Exactly.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.